The vast darkness of space stretched endlessly, punctuated by distant starlight and the quiet hum of the research vessel. Jay Park stood at the observation deck, his fingers lightly tracing the holographic control panel. Outside, the universe seemed both infinite and intimate. The Galactic Council's Deep Space Research Station had been monitoring unusual communication signals for weeks. Most alien researchers dismissed them as random interference, but Jay knew something was different. The signals carried a complexity that suggested intelligence, human intelligence. Captain Elena Rodriguez, Jay's immediate superior, had been skeptical. "Random noise," she would say, her Brazilian accent sharp with dismissal. But Jay had persistence running through his veins. He had spent countless hours analyzing every fragment, every millisecond of the transmission. When the first clear signal came through, the research station erupted into controlled chaos. Communication arrays lit up with cascading data streams, strange mathematical sequences, complex audio patterns, and bursts of information that seemed to dance between mathematical precision and creative chaos. The alien researchers from various species gathered around the primary analysis console. Kira Relin, a tall crystalline being from the Aryan system, adjusted her translation matrices. Her translucent body shifted colors as she processed the incoming data. "These signals," Kira muttered, her voice a melodic vibration. "They don't follow any standard communication protocol we've encountered." Jay smiled. Humans were always good at breaking established rules. The signal contained something unexpected. Not just communication, but layers of information. Mathematical equations intertwined with cultural references, scientific data mixed with what seemed like artistic expressions. It was as if the humans were sending not just a message, but a complete snapshot of their civilization's complexity. Preliminary analysis revealed coordinates. Precise, calculated, a direct invitation. The Galactic Council's initial response was predictable: confusion, skepticism, a hint of fear. Humans were an unknown variable in their carefully structured universal ecosystem. Kira approached Jay, her crystalline form reflecting the soft blue light of the research station. "Your species is unusual," she said, her translator rendering her alien language into clear English. Jay understood the underlying meaning. Unusual meant unpredictable. And in the galactic community, unpredictable could mean dangerous. The research station began preparing a preliminary reconnaissance mission. Standard protocol demanded careful observation, no direct contact, just surveillance and data collection. But protocols were about to change. The human signal continued, a constant pulse of information that seemed to challenge everything the Galactic Council understood about communication, technology, and potential. Jay knew this was more than just a first encounter. This was a moment that would potentially redefine humanity's place in the universe, not as a conquered or cataloged species, but as something entirely unexpected. As the research station's engines hummed and preliminary mission preparations continued, Jay felt a surge of excitement. Humans had always been explorers, dreamers, inventors. Now, they were about to introduce themselves to a galaxy that had no idea what was coming. The signal pulsed again, mathematical, artistic, challenging. A clear message from Earth. "We are here, we are different, and we are ready." Kira watched Jay, her crystalline form shifting with curiosity. The Galactic Council's carefully maintained order was about to experience its first true disruption, and Jay Park could not wait to see what would happen next. The research station moved silently through space, carrying with it the first threads of a story that would change everything. Humanity's introduction to the galactic community was not going to be quiet, diplomatic, or expected. It was going to be spectacular. Minho Kim stood in the small research laboratory, surrounded by equipment that looked more like an artist's studio than a scientific workspace. Holographic projections danced around him, displaying complex quantum patterns that seemed to breathe and move with a life of their own. The breakthrough had come unexpectedly. While most scientists were looking for complicated solutions, Minho had been thinking differently. He remembered his grandmother's words. Sometimes the simplest answer is the most powerful. 3 months earlier, the research team had received the initial data from the first human signal. Most researchers had dismissed it as random noise, but Minho saw something else, a pattern that existed between the lines of traditional understanding. His colleagues thought he was crazy. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had laughed when he first presented his theory. Quantum communication through emotional resonance, she had said. That's impossible. But Minho knew impossible was just a word invented by people who hadn't tried hard enough. The quantum prototype sat on the lab table, looking deceptively simple. A small device no larger than a human hand. It pulsed with a soft blue light that seemed to change rhythm with the room's energy. Traditional communication systems worked like rigid pipes, sending information in straight lines. Minho's device worked more like water, flowing, adapting, finding its own path. Kira Relin, the alien researcher who had been observing human scientific developments, watched with increasing fascination. Her crystalline body reflected the device's soft blue light, creating a mesmerizing display of color and movement. "Explain it to me again," she requested, her translator rendering her alien language into perfect English. Minho smiled. Traditional communication is like sending a letter. My device is more like having a conversation that adapts in real time. It doesn't just send information, it understands context, emotion, potential. The device could do something unprecedented. It could communicate complex ideas not just through data, but through emotional and contextual understanding. A single transmission could carry multiple layers of meaning, adapting instantly to the receiver's psychological state. The Galactic Council's communication experts were baffled. Their systems relied on precise, unchanging protocols. Minho's device broke every known rule of interstellar communication. During the first test, something remarkable happened. The device didn't just send a message, it created a bridge of understanding. When Kira connected to the prototype, she experienced not just information, but the entire emotional landscape behind the data. Alien researchers gathered around, their various biological forms displaying different reactions. Some were excited, some were terrified, a few were simply confused. "This changes everything," Kira whispered. The implications were massive. Imagine communication that could instantly translate not just words, but intentions. A system that could understand cultural nuances, emotional undertones, and potential misunderstandings before they occurred. Minho knew he had created more than a communication device. He had created a potential peacemaking tool. The Galactic Council's initial response was predictable: confusion, fear. A desperate attempt to understand something that challenged their entire technological framework. News spread quickly. What had started as a small laboratory experiment was becoming a potential revolution in interstellar communication. Minho looked at the device. It wasn't just a piece of technology. It was a bridge between different forms of consciousness, a way to connect minds that had previously been separated by vast distances and even more vast misunderstandings. Outside the laboratory, the research station continued its journey through the dark expanse of space. But inside, something extraordinary was happening. Humanity was showing the galaxy that innovation wasn't about complexity, it was about understanding. The quantum communication prototype pulsed softly, its blue light dancing, promising a future where communication meant true connection. And Minho, Kim smiled, knowing that his grandmother would be proud. Yuna Lee stood at the center of the diplomatic chamber, her posture calm but her eyes sharp. Around her, representatives from dozens of alien civilizations watched with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The Galactic Council had invited humans to demonstrate their unique approach to complex negotiations. What they didn't expect was a completely different method of communication. Traditional diplomatic exchanges were rigid. Each species had strict protocols, carefully measured words, and predetermined strategies. Humans were different. They understood that communication was more than just exchanging words. It was about understanding emotions, intentions, and unspoken meanings. Yuna wasn't just a diplomat. She was a psychological strategist, trained to read between the lines of any conversation. Her approach was fluid, adaptable, almost like a living communication system. The current negotiation involved a territorial dispute between two alien civilizations, the crystal-based Aryans and the energy network Quantum Collective. For standard, diplomatic teams, this would be a nightmare of complex legal arguments and historical claims. Yuna saw it differently. She began by asking questions that seemed unrelated. She wanted to understand the emotional core of the conflict, not just its surface-level arguments. Her translator didn't just convert words, it captured nuanced emotional contexts. "Tell me about your first memories of this territory," she asked the Aryan representative. The question caught everyone by surprise. The Aryan, a being of living crystal named Kira Rellan, hesitated. No one had ever asked about memories before. Diplomatic discussions were usually about legal claims and historical documents. But Yuna understood something fundamental about conflict. Most disagreements were emotional, not logical. As Kira shared a story about her civilization's connection to the disputed territory, something unexpected happened. The Quantum Collective representative began to listen differently. They weren't hearing legal arguments anymore. They were experiencing a shared emotional landscape. Minho Kim, who had developed the quantum communication prototype, watched from the side. He recognized what Yuna was doing. She was creating a communication bridge that went beyond traditional language. The diplomatic chamber grew quiet. Alien representatives from various civilizations realized they were witnessing something revolutionary. This wasn't just negotiation. This was understanding. Yuna's approach broke every known diplomatic protocol. She didn't argue. She didn't present legal documents. She created a space where both parties could truly see each other's perspective. 2 hours into the negotiation, something remarkable happened. The Aryans and the Quantum Collective began to discuss a collaborative solution, not because of legal pressures, but because they finally understood each other's emotional core. The Galactic Council representatives were stunned. Their centuries-old negotiation system seemed clumsy compared to this human approach. Kira Rellan approached Yuna after the successful negotiation. "How did you do this?" she asked. Yuna simply smiled. "We listened," she said, "not just with our ears, but with our entire being." The human approach was becoming clear. They didn't see challenges as problems to be solved, but as opportunities to understand. Their psychological flexibility was their greatest strength. News of the successful negotiation spread quickly through the research station. Humans were no longer seen as a young, inexperienced species. They were becoming recognized as masters of complex communication. Minho watched Yuna with respect. Her negotiation skills perfectly complemented his communication technology. Together, they were showing the galaxy that human potential was about adaptability, empathy, and understanding. The diplomatic chamber, once a place of strict protocols and rigid interactions, now felt alive with possibility. And at its center stood Yuna Lee, a testament to humanity's unique approach to connection. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humans were something entirely different. Not just another species to be categorized, but a force of psychological innovation that could change everything. The artifact sat in the center of the research chamber, silent and mysterious. It looked like nothing special, a small, metallic cube about the size of a human hand, with intricate patterns etched into its surface. For thousands of galactic years, no civilization had been able to unlock its secrets. Jay Park, Minho Kim, and Yuna Lee stood together, their presence both unexpected and unexpectedly significant. The Galactic Council had reluctantly invited them. After witnessing humanity's recent technological and diplomatic breakthroughs, Kira Rellan, now more ally than observer, explained the artifact's history. 12 civilizations have tried to unlock this, she said. Each failed. Some went mad in the process. Others simply disappeared. The cube had been discovered millennia ago in a distant star system. Its origin was unknown. Its purpose was a complete mystery. Advanced scanning technologies had revealed nothing. No internal mechanisms, no energy signatures, nothing that could explain its existence. Minho approached the artifact first. Where other scientists saw a puzzle to be solved through complex technological means, he saw something different. He remembered his grandmother's lessons about looking beyond the obvious. He touched the cube. Nothing happened. Yuna watched carefully. Where Minho used technological intuition, she observed psychological patterns. The artifact seemed to respond to something more than just physical interaction. "It's not about breaking it," she said softly. "It's about understanding it." The Galactic Council researchers watched with a mixture of skepticism and hope. Humans had already proven themselves unpredictable. Perhaps they would see something others had missed. Jay noticed something most missed. The artifact's surface patterns seemed to change subtly when different team members approached. Not visibly, but in a way that required careful observation. Minho began to use the quantum communication prototype, not as a scanning device, but as a way to create a different kind of connection. He wasn't trying to open the artifact, he was trying to communicate with it. Hours passed. The research team worked differently from traditional approaches. They didn't compete. They collaborated. Each brought a unique perspective. Minho's technological insight, Yuna's psychological understanding, Jay's strategic thinking. Suddenly, the cube responded. It didn't explode. It didn't reveal massive technological secrets. Instead, it began to project a complex holographic sequence that looked like a combination of mathematical equations, emotional landscapes, and historical records. The Galactic Council researchers were stunned. The artifact wasn't a weapon, it wasn't a technological device. It was a communication repository, a method of preserving knowledge that went beyond traditional understanding. It required not just technological access, but emotional and psychological connection. "It's a bridge," Yuna said, understanding emerging in her voice. Not just between information, but between different forms of consciousness. The holographic projection showed glimpses of civilizations long forgotten. But more than historical records, it showed the emotional essence of those civilizations, their hopes, their fears, their collective experiences. Kira Rellen's crystalline form vibrated with excitement. "Impossible," she whispered. But humans had just made the impossible possible. The artifact revealed something profound. Knowledge wasn't just about information, it was about understanding, about connection, about seeing beyond surface-level interactions. Minho's quantum communication prototype had prepared them for this moment. Yuna's psychological insights had created the right approach. Jay's strategic thinking had guided their exploration. As the holographic projection continued, the Galactic Council researchers realized something fundamental had changed. Humans weren't just another species to be categorized. They were potential key holders to understanding the universe itself. The small metallic cube continued its quiet revelation, a testament to humanity's unique approach to discovery. Something extraordinary was happening, and it was just the beginning. The research station trembled with energy. Something fundamental was changing in the universe, and humanity stood at the center of this transformation. Jay Park watched the holographic displays, understanding now that the artifact was more than just a discovery. It was a key to reimagining everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about existence. The first wave of changes came quickly. The communication technologies developed by Minho started spreading across different alien civilizations. Suddenly, species that had been isolated for millennia could truly understand each other, not just through words, but through emotional and contextual connections. Kira Rellen, who had become a close ally, explained the magnitude of the shift. "We've been communicating for thousands of years," she said, "but we never truly listened before." Yuna's diplomatic strategies began transforming political structures. Negotiations were no longer about winning, but about understanding. The rigid hierarchical systems of the Galactic Council started to crumble, replaced by more fluid, adaptive approaches. The artifact continued revealing its secrets. Each new layer of information challenged existing scientific and philosophical understanding. It showed that knowledge wasn't linear. It was a complex, interconnected web of experiences and perspectives. Alien civilizations began sending research teams to study the human approach. They wanted to understand how a relatively young species could bring such profound change. Minho's quantum communication prototype evolved. It was no longer just a technology, but a new way of understanding consciousness. Research stations across the galaxy started adapting human-inspired communication methods. The transformation wasn't just technological, it was psychological. Civilizations that had been isolated or in conflict began finding common ground. The artifact showed that beneath different biological forms, there was a fundamental shared experience of existence. Jay understood that humanity's strength wasn't in military power or advanced technology. It was in their ability to adapt, to see connections where others saw barriers. The Galactic Council's central chamber, once a place of rigid protocols, now became a dynamic space of collaborative thinking. Human researchers moved freely among alien species, sharing insights and learning. Yuna's approach to diplomacy became a new standard. Emotional intelligence was now considered as important as technological capability. Species began training their diplomats and leaders in human-inspired communication techniques. The artifact continued its revelations. It showed ancient civilizations that had been lost to time, their experiences preserved not just as historical records, but as living emotional landscapes. Kira watched in amazement as human researchers approached scientific challenges differently. Where alien scientists saw problems to be solved, humans saw opportunities to understand. The transformation wasn't just external. It was changing how different species perceived themselves and their place in the universe. Minho's quantum communication system became the new standard of interstellar communication. It wasn't just about sending information. It was about creating understanding. Research stations across the galaxy began redesigning their approaches. Human researchers were no longer seen as newcomers, but as key innovators driving a massive shift in universal understanding. The artifact's final revelation was the most profound. It showed that the universe was not a collection of separate entities, but a complex, interconnected system of consciousness. Jay, Minho, and Yuna became more than just researchers. They were symbols of a new way of thinking. Their approach challenged everything the Galactic Council had believed about intelligence, communication, and existence. Alien civilizations started integrating human perspectives into their educational systems. Children were taught to think like humans, with curiosity, adaptability, and an understanding that true knowledge goes beyond simple information. The research station continued its journey through space, but now it carried something more than just technological equipment. It carried a new way of understanding the universe. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through military might or technological superiority. They had transformed it through something more powerful, the ability to truly connect, to understand, to see beyond surface-level differences. And this was just the beginning. The universe watched, and waited, and changed.